Hello, welcome to the interview here on France 24. Well, is Mitt Romney hiding something from the American voters? Now, the Barack Obama campaign sure thinks so. And it's been hard at work portraying the presumptive Republican nominee for U.S. president as a tycoon who's out of touch with ordinary American workers. Now, Obama's people also want to know about the source of Mitt Romney's estimated $230 million, you heard that right, $230 million fortune. They say several years of missing tax returns could shed some light if only the Romney campaign would release those tax returns. Now, Romney says he's doing everything by the book and that the Obama people are demonizing him. Demonizing him, why? Because he's successful and he's rich. Now, my guest today could perhaps shed some light of his own on what is a brewing finance battle in this campaign. Bob Biersack, thanks for joining us. You are a senior fellow. You're a senior fellow at the Center for Responsive Politics in Washington, D.C. I guess that's a self-explanatory sort of title. Before that, you spent 30 years with the U.S. Federal Election Commission. You were developing and promoting disclosure procedures. And you've written extensively, I may add, on campaign finance here in Washington. Thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Cutting to the chase, Bob. Taxes. We know that Mitt Romney has released 2 years of taxes, 2009, 2010. There are several years he has not released. And a lot of people say, what is he hiding? Why doesn't he show us where he was putting his money for those years? His father, George Romney, when he ran for president decades ago, he was a rich businessman. He released all 12 years of his tax returns. Why hasn't his son followed suit?
That's a question you really have to ask the campaign. It's been a tradition through the years for presidential candidates when they reach this point, when they're the nominees of their parties, to release several years of tax returns. The Romney campaign so far has chosen not to.
But what I'm saying, from you were, on the Federal Election Commission, there's nothing illegal about partial disclosure. When Romney's campaign says we've done everything by the book, everything we have to legally, they're not lying.
No, that's correct. There's nothing in the campaign finance law that requires the release of tax returns at all. There is a personal financial disclosure statement that has to be released once a year by candidates, which gives a sense of their assets sort of in broad categories. Tax returns are much more specific. They give you much more information about details about how the money was raised, where it is now. And so that's really what the Obama campaign is pursuing and what traditionally people have done in the past.
Is it not a legitimate issue? I mean, I'm just trying to put myself in the perspective. If I were sitting there as a U.S. voter right now looking at this campaign, I don't want to call it outrage, but why isn't there sort of more popular demand for him right now, more pressure being put? Release these tax returns. Yeah, we do want to know where this money was.
I think Americans sort of assume that people in senior positions in industry and certainly in finance, where Mr. Romney made his career, have complicated financial situations, and so they may not understand it fully. They may be somewhat skeptical of it. There's a lot of discussion in the U.S. now about this split between those who have lots of financial resources and those who don't. But most of the candidates, no matter which party, when they come to this point, they're fairly wealthy, and so that issue applies both ways.
I want to address, you just used the term complicated finances, talking about Mitt Romney. We saw the Obama campaigner release a new, very negative ad this week in which you hear Mitt Romney singing sort of an off-key rendition of America the Beautiful. You see him on screen at a campaign stop in Florida. Then you see an image of Switzerland pops up onto the screen. And all of a sudden you see a caption. And the caption reads, he had millions in a Swiss bank account. And then another caption comes up, and in the Cayman Islands. These are both offshore tax havens. Anything wrong with that? His money's offshore.
Legally, it's fine. The question then becomes, is he avoiding taxes? Is this something that's somehow unpatriotic? Is it something that someone who runs for president shouldn't be doing? I suppose that's the inference that the Obama campaign is trying to make.
You're telling me all of this.
But there's nothing illegal about it.
There's nothing illegal about it. I'm just curious, though, have there been efforts over the years, perhaps, to look at some of these issues? And you say nothing's illegal about it, but perhaps to make some of these things illegal, or at least something that could be more heavily scrutinized by campaign finance officials?
There have been questions in the past about foreign accounts, about the secrecy of Swiss banks, for example. We've had some, since the financial meltdown in 2008, there have been some scrutiny of those kinds of accounts, whether it's really just tax avoidance, which would be okay, or whether it's actually manipulating the process in order not to pay taxes that you're legally responsible for. No one's suggesting that in this case, but those are the kinds of issues that come up.
Just to be fair here, I don't want to be accused of a Romney-bashing interview here. Barack Obama, what was his tax situation? How much did he declare when he was running? How would you sort of assess his level of disclosure so far in this campaign?
He's released a number of his tax returns. Of course, while he's president, he releases them routinely every year. He's certainly a wealthy person. They've done very well, even while they were in the White House, with proceeds from books and royalties and those sorts of things. So he doesn't necessarily represent someone who's in the what we call the 99% here, but almost no one at that level would. Really, in this campaign, there have been issues of transparency throughout in lots of different areas. And in general, the Romney campaign has been more skeptical, I would say, of being fully open or aggressively transparent. The president's campaign has been a little more forthright there.
These are candidates who have been in a very frantic fundraising drive, and there were some figures that recently came out showing that Mitt Romney outraised Obama by $35 million in the month of June. I think he raised $106 million to Obama's $71 million. Let me ask the stupid question. How did a challenger to an incumbent president raise that much more money in a single month?
It actually happens almost every cycle. Once a candidate becomes the presumptive nominee, once the primaries are finished and we know who the challenging party will be putting forward in November, then there's a big coalescing of supporters of that party in general. We know the candidate now, we can give to them, maybe we supported someone else earlier in the period, but now we have our person, and so a lot of money flows into those campaigns. The same thing happened, for example, in 2004 when Senator John Kerry became the Democratic nominee.
So there's that spurt in funding.
Sure, it all happens at once.
We've talked in the past about super PACs, the so-called, they're super political action committees. I guess they were made possible by a Supreme Court verdict back in 2010. They allow essentially campaigns to raise and spend unlimited amounts of money from individuals, corporations, unions, and associations. How much is that?
Well, we'd be a little more careful about how we said that. They allow those organizations, corporations, unions, other kinds of associations, to independently be involved in campaigns by running advertising or supporting their favorite candidates, challenging the.
But they don't have to say who the candidate is.
But they're not giving the money to the candidates. That's the important legal distinction here.
And this is where I'm sort of a little foggy here, I guess, because Mitt Romney's super PAC is called Restore Our Future, I believe, and it raised $20 million, I believe, last month, which is 3 times as much as Obama's super PAC, Priorities, U.S. Priorities Action, I think. That just seems like an amazing amount of money. Are these individuals putting money into these super PACs? Where are these super PACs getting their money?
So far, in this year, we've seen very wealthy individual people giving $1 million, $10 million, $20 million in some cases to these organizations. There's no limit on that. And actually, that sort of thing, a person spending money on their own in campaigns, has been legal for a very long time. The difference this cycle is that corporations or unions can use directly their treasury funds, the profits from the company, in the same way. We haven't seen that at a significant level yet, but the fall campaign is still fairly far away.
Do you believe that the existence and the emergence of super PACs as big players in the financing of U.S. presidential campaigns, do you believe that is, I'll use the word, distorting the political landscape and the way these campaigns are run and they progress?
I think it runs the risk of that. I don't know that we'll have to wait and assess things after the campaign is over, really. But whenever you have big accumulations of wealth and they can be brought to bear very forcefully, very quickly in the election process, then you run the risk of having that kind of distortion. At the same time, though, technology is changing all the time. It's much easier for individuals to give small amounts to candidates. The Obama campaign still raises much of its money in very small amounts, $20, $50, $100 per person. It adds up to a substantial amount.
That's a major difference, it would seem, between these two candidates. Obama, as we know, in 2008, was a very much grassroots campaign based on these small types of donations. It's still that way in this cycle, in this 2012 cycle?
It is. Almost half of the Obama campaign's money has come in contributions of less than $200, which for an incumbent president is fairly unusual. The normal model is much more like Romney's model. That's the way presidential campaigns in the U.S. have traditionally been funded in the past.
Bob Biersack, very briefly, U.S. politics, seen from Europe, is a lot about money, if not all about money in some respects. These candidates are spending a lot of time raising money. I mean, in hedge fund managers' homes in the Hamptons and stuff. Obama and Romney spending equal amounts of time in fundraising?
So far, that has been the case. The president spent an unusual amount of time fundraising this year, more than most incumbents have in the past, but it's because the pressure is bigger and because of this new money, because of all these factors. It's much more important. They feel more intensity in the fundraising effort.
Bob Biersack, thank you very much. Joining us from Washington today from the Center for Responsive Politics, former Federal Election Commission official for 30 years. We've been talking about Mitt Romney's campaign finances and a little bit of Barack Obama's campaign finances thrown in there. Appreciate you spending your time with us. And this is an election, if anything, that is full of cash in the United States this year. Thanks for watching the France 24 interview.